We just love Salawat. So I'm busy talking and my mic is switched off. Anyways, before I continue, just to let you know, if you are traveling on the N3, please take note that there is a collision that has happened there. So it happened this morning just after the 8 a.m. A truck has collided. So it's both bounds actually, but more on the PMB bound. Remember, that's on the N3 at the bottom of Key Ridge. So if you are traveling to Pietermaritzburg, please take note, even coming back from Pietermaritzburg to Durban, the N3, just take note of that. Now, we're talking about something very important. South Africans living abroad want to be recognized as 10th province. Operation Watershed says South Africans living abroad want to be acknowledged as a constituency and recognized as the 10th province. The group is calling for representatives of the over 1 million, subhanAllah, over 1 million South Africans living abroad to be included in the National Dialogue Steering Committee. Join us live on Facebook and YouTube. We are joined by Haley Richard. I don't know.
Nobody can say it. It's fine.
I think say your surname.
Reichardt, but yeah, I've been called Richard and Rickard and all sorts of things.
Don't worry, can you see my surname, Rnagrage? So I've also had many surnames and still do. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. Haley is all the way in London and she's Operation Watershed founder and a South African as well. Now, what inspired the idea of recognizing South Africans living abroad as the 10th province?
So as you just mentioned, there's general consensus that there's 1 million of us. Nobody actually knows. I think it could be double that. And I've been involved with the global South African expat diaspora community for more than a decade. And the overwhelming majority of people love South Africa, miss South Africa. A lot of people wouldn't be abroad if it weren't for the status of South Africa, economically, safety-wise. So it's a combination of the last 10 years of the work, my involvement with the community through charity, civil society, political activities. And the term the 10th province, it was actually coined, I believe, by a chap called Jeff Johnson, who is also London-based. So he set up what's now known as the Nedbank South African Charity Golf Day. I sat on the organizing committee of it for 6 years. It's a fantastic event. So yeah, it kind of came about through conversations that he had with the likes of Francois Pienaar, F.W. de Klerk, who was a patron of the day. So, and I think it's just important. We live in this global society, this global economy, and people shouldn't be, moving abroad. It's not just, oh well, you move abroad and you lose your citizenship. Well, I say that lightly with the loss of citizenship campaign, which is something I initiated back in 2014. But we actually take the country with us, and I come across the most incredible South Africans abroad, people involved with the chambers of commerce abroad, people involved running charities, running businesses. So we have potential to make a significant positive contribution to the country.
Absolutely. Now, you said something so interesting because I think people in South Africa often think the grass is greener on the other side. And as you said, we love South Africa. And I think, until you travel and you experience, holiday is one thing, but emigrating to actually earn a living is a whole different experience altogether. How significant is the diaspora's community in terms of numbers, skills, and potential impact on South Africans' development?
So I'll just touch base on what you've mentioned at the beginning of that about the grass being greener.
Yes.
And I think, some people have been able to travel, and they kind of know what life is like abroad before they make that move. Others don't. Others just dive in, never been to a country, never been to the UK, and they pack up and move over. And there are some people who are doing phenomenally well. Most people kind of seem to be in the middle, and then there are people who are not in fortunate positions, and so it is quite a wide variety. But in terms of, as if we've mentioned the numbers, 1 million, I personally believe could be 2 million. Some people even say more than that. And in terms of skills, the majority abroad are skilled workers. There's going back to when we did the global repatriation and expatriation, when our president closed our airspace during COVID, we had 1,000 farm workers in America. There are so many teachers all over the world, but particularly in sort of Asian countries. There are offshore workers. There are aviation, people working in aviation all over the world, IT specialists. There's a huge diaspora here of nurses, social workers, people working in NHS, and I don't think people really realize. So, like, yeah, there's accountants, IT specialists, all the rest of it. So there is an enormous amount of untapped talent, untapped skills, untapped resources, and just the sort of networks. So I'm a member of the Lekker network, which was started by a couple of South Africans last year. It's been officially going for a few months now. Which is basically South Africans around the world doing business with each other, and just seeing the collaboration. So the whole idea is you join with one question, which is how can I help you? And it's seeing how people are collaborating and, hey guys, I need a link to this type of person in these types of companies, and just people are just coming forward and saying, yeah, I know somebody, I can connect you. People saying we're being impacted, particularly helping keep business open in South Africa. The number one problem, other than politics and corruption, the number one problem is the economy. So we need to get that economy up to 3 to 5%, and helping keep businesses in South Africa open doors. So some guys will come onto the group and say, hey guys, we export to the US, we're being hit by those trade tariffs, we need to seek alternative markets. And then other guys will come and, yeah, we do importing, whether it's UK, Dubai, wherever it is, happy to have the conversation. So, for us, it's like, how can we tap into those networks of South Africans abroad to be able to facilitate things like that with economic growth in particular in South Africa?
Absolutely. Now, for many South Africans abroad, I think they feel very disconnected from local politics. How do you actually envision bridging that gap?
It is a huge gap. So some people do follow mainstream media, and they tend to kind of see the very negative, mainstream
Yeah,
daily updates,
there's
and
a lot.
a lot of it is a lot of negativity, and a lot of people are very disengaged. They might hear an occasional bit, but they're not really following, as consistently, and reading all the articles and doing the homework. So this is a big part of why I've set this up. So I've been involved with the global community for more than a decade, and particularly over the last sort of 5 years, and as I've navigated and built relationships with different political parties, party leaders, MPs, civil society groups, charities, and just ordinary South Africans, living in townships or urban areas, etc. I realized that there was a huge need for a civil society initiative focusing on South Africans abroad to help bridge that gap. A lot of people abroad, taking elections, for example, overseas voting, the numbers are really low because of access to voting is a problem.
Mm,
But when you look at the results, it's 95% vote opposition, of which 75% are voting the DA. People kind of have this mentality of, oh, it's DA, ANC, or EFF, so I'm voting DA. They don't know policies of parties. They don't know other parties. They don't know the ins and outs and all the shenanigans that go on in the political realm. So it's
mhm.
a very narrow, they're not well educated and well versed
Yeah,
on
perspective.
options available, policies, etc.
Mhm.
So for me, it's a case of, I've done 2 pre-election trips, going into townships, spending time with politicians, speaking to people in the communities, creating content and sharing that to people abroad. And one thing for me that was so powerful in my trip last year, my first day, we went into Soweto with Ayanda Ali, who is a member of provincial Gauteng legislature from Build One SA. And it was a new community. And she said to them, I'm not here to ask you to vote. I'm just here to get to know you, see, like, learn your experience, etc. And she explained why I was there. And this community shouted at her. Literally, there was about 50 of them shouting, we do not want government grants. We want jobs. Please bring us jobs. And that the
Ah,
reason why that was so powerful for me was because there's a big misconception from South Africans abroad of, it's almost like a
mm,
they mentality, like, oh, they want to sit on government grants and they still vote the status quo. So having that experience, being in the townships and seeing and experiencing firsthand and being able to relate that information is part of my process of educating those abroad. So I work with 3 words: educate, empower, and inspire. You can't inspire somebody to drive change themselves until you've empowered them, and you need to empower them by educating them. So that's my sort of methodology, if you will. So for me, it is really important to navigate. I can be meeting senior politicians, or I'm in townships, and kind of people seem to have this view of like, oh, the politicians are up there on their, up in the sky kind of thing, and we're just like these mere little mortals down on the ground. And I was like, it's actually really easy to build relationships with politicians. It's easy to get their contact details. I've just randomly reached out to people and WhatsApp them and built these relationships. And every single politician, every single member of parliament that I've spoken to has said the same thing to me, which is, we need you guys. We can't save this country on our own. We need civil society. We need ordinary South Africans to step up and get involved. So that is part of my process, is getting people to understand the lived reality of South Africans on the ground, particularly from underprivileged communities, and then helping educate those abroad as to how they can drive the change, to empower those in abroad and back in South Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the general perception is that South Africans, the majority are just lazy and they just want the handouts and things. But I did watch a clip where there are people that are actually complaining and wishing that they had the old South Africa back, despite the challenges that they said at least there were jobs, at least we could be porters in hotels, at least we could do cleaning, at least there was some form of a way that we could earn a livelihood. So that's very, very powerful coming firsthand from your perspective in London. How do South Africans overseas actually view the current political and economic situation back home? Because you did mention that, it's a situation that makes you guys leave. And I think many people would want to leave, but it would be wonderful to hear from you.
Yeah, I think people feel very torn, and particularly over the last sort of 15 years of our country's political history. The overwhelming majority have a very negative perception. Kind of South Africa's just becoming another Zimbabwe. The problems are too big. It's doomed. It's a failed state. There's nothing that can be done. It's past saving. And I find when I kind of I like pushing back on people when I engage in conversation with them, and they come across with this very negative, heavy kind of view and approach, and when you scrape away that level of anger and frustration, you actually get down into a level of hurt, and I find the people who display the most anger and the most frustration are the ones that are hurting the most, and when you be able to kind of pinpoint that and kind of break the conversation down a little bit deeper, they're the ones that miss the country the most. They're the ones that are like just gutted with the state of the country. And a lot of people that have moved abroad, yes, it is a choice, but they feel forced. They feel like they've been pushed out of the country. So it's kind of, for me, a huge part for me is teaching those abroad how we can actually, what steps that we can take to actually drive the change. And it starts with changing their psychology, changing their perception. So simple things of like overseas voting. So many people I know who were on the voters roll, had their necessary ID and passport documents, lived fairly close to a foreign mission, still chose not to vote because they believed that their vote would not be counted. So I was involved with the 2014 elections. I'm a former DA abroad member, but I've switched to civil society because I can reach more people that way. And I stood as a observer in this election. So we had 2 days of voting in London because of the high numbers. And we left there, I think it was 2:00 the Monday morning, after watching the observers, which is the foreign mission staff, counting all the envelopes. And then some of the observers and party agents actually went to South Africa to watch the opening of those ballots, and making sure that they were received. So that to me was really important. So I was an observer through Groundwork Collective, which is another civil society organization that does a huge amount of voter education and registration work in South Africa. And it was, I try and almost like walk the talk and show people, this is how you be an active citizen, this is how you drive the change. So it's a huge amount of slog behind the scenes, especially around consular services, lobbying, people waiting a year or more for documents, passports, etc. But it's building relationships, so building a working relationship with Home Affairs, which I have managed to achieve, but also equally lobbying. And I've said to them, I'm trying to build a working relationship with you, but I'm also lobbying because of the issues as part of bringing people on board, getting those abroad to be more involved, to understand how you drive change. So it's a very slow process, but it's, I think, a very needed process to draw them in rather than pushing them out.
Absolutely. Due to time, I'm going to ask if you can quickly answer this one. If this 10th province proposal is accepted, what would you personally like to see changed first?
The number one thing comes down to the voting. So in the previous election, this 2024 election with the change, we had the national ballot and the regional to national ballot. So each of those were worth 200 seats in parliament. In previous elections, everybody had one national ballot, which was towards 400 seats. We only get the national ballot because we are not recognized as a constituency, i.e. a 10th province. So the value of our vote was actually halved because we could only vote towards 200 seats. So that in itself is unconstitutional and needs to be changed. Second to that, because the whole implementation of that second ballot was for independent candidates. So again, because we are not recognized as a constituency or a province, we cannot nominate nor vote for an independent candidate, which is further disenfranchising our voting rights. And I believe that if that could be changed, so being recognized officially and legally as a 10th province, it would open doors for the voting. It would automatically double because you've got the two ballots. It would restore the voting rights. And then it would, if there was an independent candidate representing South Africans abroad, I think it would go a long way to, again, bringing them in and getting them excited and getting them like, oh, actually, we have a seat at the top table. We now have a voice. Let's dive in. There's so many people abroad that run businesses. They want to see more employment in South Africa, but they just don't feel that there are channels available to them to help drive investment and things like that.
Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful chatting with you, and also quite, what can I say, informative to know that there's so much that is going on. And yes, South Africans that are abroad are just not, what can I say, it's not like you've just fell away from the country. You are still South African, and also to understand that they still have that sense of wanting to be belong, still that sense of belonging, and still want to make a difference. And something that you highlighted is something I think we all tend to feel is that why even vote? It's not even going to count. And imagine everyone that decides not to vote, that the power of one, and then collectively there's such power in that. Hayley, it's been wonderful chatting with you. We do hope that you enjoy the weather in London until we connect again.
It's raining.
Wonderful. Until we connect again. Bye for now. And that was Hayley Rnagrage. I hope I said her surname correctly. So basically, South Africa